All right, guys, it's time for the Next Level Guy Show, a men's interview, interest, and improvement-focused podcast featuring interviews with the greats from all industries to help you better your life. Each week, a new episode features an interview with one of the greats, covering all aspects of their story, from life hacks to tips and protocols that have allowed them to live life on the next level. We then highlight concrete action steps that you can use to improve your life. And now, your host, Ian Dawson Mackay.
And today's guest is Tripp Kramer, aka Tripp Advice. Tripp is a leading men's dating and relationship coach who is the #1 dating channel on YouTube. Tripp became frustrated with his own struggles with women when he was in college. He struggled to build attraction and escape the friend zone with the girls he would meet. He eventually decided enough was enough and he wanted to get a handle on this and meet the women he always wanted to in his life. He tried pickup and found it didn't work for him as he felt inauthentic and he was playing a character. And girls picked up on this. He was determined to figure out a better way, so he went out routinely and approached women, being himself, and found the strategies and tips that eventually worked with the women. So he built a dating toolbox that brought dates and relationships with the women he had always wished for. Furthermore, he figured out what makes a man truly attractive and how to be the most attractive version of yourself and stay true to who you are. As his success with women increased, he realised he was onto something and started his own podcast and dating company to help others. To date, he has coached thousands of men to become truly confident and attract the woman of their choice. His passion remains helping men become powerful, confident, and date any kind of woman they want, all while being true to themselves. And in this interview, we discuss relationships and dating, how to become more attractive to women, what truly matters, how to build attraction during conversations, how to ask for her number, how to get more dates, and so much more. And now, let's get to the interview. Thank you so much for doing this, Tripp. I've become a major fan of your podcast over the last wee while. Now with COVID coming and everybody's getting sort of back into semi-normality and people are looking to date again, I thought this was a perfect time to have you on. But for those who maybe don't recognise the name, could you just give a quick intro of who you are and why you're sort of changing dating in general?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I'm Tripp Kramer. I run the company Tripp Advice at trippadvice.com. I'm a dating coach for shy men and really all men who are looking to get better at dating, which means get a girlfriend, lose their virginity, be able to have the kind of dating life they want, meet the kinds of women that they don't settle for. And I've been doing it for the past 10 years. The reason why I got into it was because I was a guy who was shy and didn't have the dating life that I wanted and wasn't attracting the women that I wanted to, the ones that I wanted to either sleep with or get into relationships with. And it didn't work out for me for many years. So I decided to dive deep into the world of understanding how to meet women, attraction. There was books like The Game and Pickup Advice, material out there, and I was diving into that and whatever I can get my hands on. And I put myself through my own boot camp, so to speak, in terms of learning how to go out there and approach women. And I did this for about a year to 2 years straight. So I was going out, meeting women nonstop, learning how to approach, learning how to flirt, learning how to be more charismatic and more confident. Didn't realize it was something you could learn until I found that there was material out there, just like maybe someone's listening right now to material like this. And I kind of took it to that next level, going out like almost every day for 2 years. And I ended up getting results. And I thought, man, I know I can help other guys get good at this. So me and a buddy started a podcast, not the one that I do now. The one I do now called How to Talk to Girls is one that's 5 years old. But the one I started that I'm mentioning now was back in 2009, over 10 years ago. But that podcast is no longer, but I was doing that for a year or two. And that just pushed me into wanting to start my own thing where I help guys and help them in terms of meeting more women and getting out of their shyness. And that's what I started. I started that 10 years ago and I've been doing it ever since. And it's been rewarding. It's been challenging, but I live it. And I love doing it every single day. And I love getting opportunities like this to come on a podcast and share whatever I can.
Because that's how I originally found you, was through your first podcast.
Through my first through dudes talking about chicks.
I, I had just started going out. I'd been really shy, self-reserved, and I really struggled with approaching women, even going into social sort of situations. And I started finding new, real social dynamics and companies like that. And I thought, like you said, it was like, oh, this can be taught. This isn't something you're just born with or you suck at it. You can actually learn this. You can be good at this kind of an environment. How did you struggle with that initially? Were you quite sort of reserved when you were younger and didn't like approaching women, or like what was that? Can you remember that moment that you thought, no, I need to change this. I need to learn how to do it?
Yeah, I was what I would call a shy extrovert. So I did like being social. I did like hanging out with friends. I did like, being around people, but I was just very shy. And those kinds of people exist. Clearly, I'm one of those people. So I still was nervous to talk to people. I was nervous to, go outside of my immediate friend group or immediate social circle to meet women. I got friend zoned quite a bit in college and all the way back into high school. So I wasn't meeting the women that I really wanted to meet unless I was really drunk, and even then, that didn't even work that well. So it was just it was a challenge for all my childhood into my early 20s, and then I ended up moving to Los Angeles from Chicago to pursue a career in entertainment. And working in entertainment in LA with only a couple of friends that I really knew and barely any social circle, I found myself very isolated. And being very isolated can be very tough, especially on an extrovert. And I was like, well, I got to learn how to meet other people. I got to learn how to meet women. And there wasn't apps at this time. Tinder didn't come out till 2012. And we're talking, this is 2007, 2008. So what I ended up doing was, that was it. Like I already told the rest of that part, as I found the information online and read the book, The Game, and it kind of introduced me to this world of learning how to meet women. But yeah, I was just all alone. And I realized I had to do something or else I'd be completely stuck. And I was doing online dating. There was online dating, which is, I don't know if people even do that anymore, but they go on sites and they message women instead of swiping. And what ended up happening was I just wasn't getting the results that I wanted, and I wasn't meeting the women that I wanted. So I was like, all right, this is it. I am now forced to go out and meet women. I'm actually really glad that Tinder wasn't around because I just have a gut feeling I might have stuck around a little longer in this phase of, okay, I'm getting a little bit of results. Like I meet a girl here and there, and that would have just kept me in that bubble and not pushed me to go out and meet people in person because I was too scared to do it. So eventually, that's what ended up happening. I was past my breaking point, and I went out and started approaching women, and it was very, very hard. It was insanely hard, but it took time, and I'm really glad that I went through that process because it worked. It just took a lot of time and a lot of shitty nights, and I just had to get through it to finally come out on the other side.
I definitely remember those days of, like, was it Plenty of Fish and
There you go.
yeah, I was trying to remember what other sites we used, and it
Well,
was
Plenty of
just
Fish is still around. Okay, Cupid. I don't even know if I ever used that one. That didn't actually get too popular till after. I was using sites like JDate. I was on, I think I was on Match. The most popular ones at the time were eHarmony, Match, Plenty of Fish, and JDate. Those were like the biggest ones that existed.
I mean, I'm still using Match up till about a couple of years ago, and then I went back on it, and just yeah, it's changed. There's a lot more kind of ego-driven people on it. They just want the stats. They want people just to email them and fawn over them, but they have no real interest in dating you. And I kind of seen a lot of shallow people on there. I was really surprised because Match used to be quite good for meeting people on it. Um, I mean, I know how you feel like that moment of you're in your little bubble, but you're getting just enough kind of interest, you're getting enough dates just to keep you in that sort of safe space to kind of
Yeah,
say, I don't need to. I'm meeting people, but it's never the right person for you. It's never the right type of person. And do you think, is that what you see a lot of your clients going wrong initially? Is that they think there's nothing wrong? They have that fixed mindset that they can't go and meet new people, so they have to. it's a horrible phrase, but to take what they can get.
Yeah, they settle. You know, they settle, and I see a lot of guys doing that, and I believe that the divorce rate in America, which is extremely high, is one of the reasons for that. Is you settle with someone you don't really like, but you end up having kids, and I say that maybe that's a little intense. You like them enough. Obviously, you're getting married to them and you're having kids with
Mm.
them, but maybe there was someone who was a better fit. And I want to get people stuck into this paradox of choice situation. This whole idea where, well, now we can swipe and we can learn how to approach girls. So now we have so many options that you don't end up picking. That's not good either. So I'm not trying to force any guy to go far on the other end of the spectrum of, well, now, how do you pick, right? The other end of the spectrum is you settle and you want to find somewhere in the middle there where you're not settling at all. You're finding someone who's great, but the grass is always greener. So maybe there's someone out there who you think is better for you, but in reality, the person in front of you is good enough. And I don't say that in the settling way. I say it in the way where that they're good enough. Like you got it. You got the person who you really want, and it's a good person, and you stick with that, and you don't need to keep bopping around too much. I mean, that's if you're looking for a relationship.
Because I mean, I think a lot of the issues we have is we still have this old belief that you have to be married before you're 30. You have to have the 2.4 kids. You have to. It's almost like this is what society has dictated for you, and you're a failure if you don't. And nowadays, people are changing jobs the whole time. People are getting married in their 90s and all these kind of old ages. People are chasing their dreams even after retirement and stuff. And I think we kind of have to forget past the old sort of stereotypes. I mean, one thing before we go any further, probably better to sort of say a lot of people think of anybody that teaches guys to get better at meeting women, etc. It's pickup, and it's you're devious and you're doing this and you're doing that, but your stuff is nothing like what the sleazy pickup thing. But what's your opinion on pickup? How do you feel that your sort of teachings differentiate from that, because they're a world apart? But for people who don't know that this side of things, how would you describe it?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say pickup material is more on the side of doing a lot of things that aren't congruent with who you are. So if you go deep into pickup material, you'll find a lot of what's called routines or things to say that are just complete lies and weird techniques and things that just you're almost like playing a character. And
That's why I stopped doing it.
yeah, me too. It just is like this is too weird, and also it's just kind of hard. To be honest, it was hard to learn all that stuff and memorize routines, and if you go into like the old pickup stuff like mystery method, that's hard. Like I'm not saying it doesn't work. Clearly all this stuff works, but it's like really challenging. And also it's like who are you becoming? It's really you don't feel right about it. You feel very strange about it, and you're overworking. Like his whole model is extensive where I don't think it needs to be that difficult. I've really broken down what I think works and know what works into a very simple system. And of course, we're all, have created systems, all the coaches. So we all have something, but I believe mine is simple and it's elegant and it's easy to use and it will keep you being the same person that you are. And it's not going to be sleazy or inauthentic and you can still be and I think that's the new wave and where things are going. And it is possible. Of course, everything takes work. So whether you're doing pickup artist information or advice or you're doing the advice that I give, you still need to put in the time, the energy, the effort. You need to go out, you need to approach women, you need to get rejected. There's things that you need to go through that are going to be challenging no matter what material you're using. But I like to say that my stuff is just a little bit more simplistic, but still works and doesn't change who you are in the inside, basically.
Because that's something I really struggled with the pickup attitude. It was here's a stock line to use. Go into any situation with any person and just say this, and don't show any part of your personality. And I thought none of this sort of was me, and I think people are very easy if you're not congruent to who you truly are. I mean, how would you advise somebody listening to this? So, say they've been single for a while. Like majority of us are coming out of lockdowns, so you're going to be in a situation where you've maybe not dated for a while, and people are all want to get back on. So, if we look at it from that sort of side of approach, how would you start somebody now who's looking to become more attractive to build their kind of life to be attractive enough that women are naturally drawn to it who want to be part of it? How would you start working with a client into changing their fixed mindset, changing their approach to life, their just making them more attractive in general?
Yeah, I mean, it's a big question, and basically I could speak on this for about 20 hours straight. But if I had to just give the kind of overall general idea here, first of all, you got to work on a few limiting beliefs, and we go over that in my coaching program. Helping you with rejection, fear of rejection, embarrassment of people watching, um, going over the whole idea of putting women on a pedestal, thinking you're not good enough to have a very attractive woman or a quality woman. So we have mindset work to go over, but then you do have to become an attractive guy. They have to be somewhat attracted to you, and we do that through going through two sections of who a man is comprised of, which is their inner qualities and their outer qualities. So the inner qualities is your behaviors. So inner qualities is just the way you behave. And your outer qualities are all the things that most guys usually focus on or think that they need to focus on, which is your money, your looks, your lifestyle, your status. Both are very important. You need to work on both. My book Magnetic talks about this in depth, but basically what I've figured out is that you are going to be concentrating very hard on improving and excelling in your inner qualities area, your behavior. And then with your outer qualities, you're just going to be always optimizing those in the background for the rest of your life. So what I mean is you're going to work on your behaviors, aka inner qualities. That's the way that you talk to women. That's the way that you behave with them. That's your confidence. That's your courage. That's your self-esteem. That's your charisma. That's the way you're going to be able to talk to a woman. And I have a whole system, which I call TED, which stands for attention, entertainment, and dominance, which are the main three behaviors that you need to work on to be a more attractive person. What guys don't understand is they're focusing more on, I got to be more attractive physically. I got to make more money. I got to have higher status. That's a very hard game to play because there's always going to be a guy who's more attractive than you and has more money than you. And it's just much harder. And so it's going to be way more efficient to work on your inner qualities because that's something that you can't fake. So you have to make sure that what you're doing is you're working more in your behaviors and optimizing your outer qualities. So you work on the TED system that I've just talked about a little bit, so on your behaviors. And in the background, you got to look as attractive as you can, dress the best that you can, do the best with grooming that you can, make sure that you're living a life that's purposeful to you in your career and in the way that you're pursuing your goals, making sure that you have a good lifestyle with friends around you and a social circle that brings you up and lifts you up. And that's stuff that is not going to happen overnight, and that's okay. And then, by the way, that was one of the problems I remember having when I was diving into pickup material. I remember getting a program, and I remember the guy was talking a lot about all these things to do with, like, make sure you get a car that's going to be, not too expensive, but it's nice enough, and like all these details. And it's like, wait, what? I just want to learn how to talk to girls. Like, what is all this stuff? And it got me so overwhelmed, and I did not finish that program. And so I realized that, yeah, that stuff is important, but it's okay if it's not all handled right now. You just start today and you continue to optimize forever. You're always going to be optimizing your health, your grooming, your fashion. That stuff is always going to be there in the background. But what you're going to focus on now is changing the way that you behave, changing the way that you talk to women, the way that you are going to be approaching them and giving them eye contact and talking about the things that are challenging to them, and being able to entertain yourself through the process so that they can attached to that energy and be really interested in being around you when they're having conversations with you and making them chase you a little bit. All that stuff is the stuff you work on now. So without going, too deep into all the little details, that's the basic structure that I found that's absolute best. And what's cool about that is that's just the formula for an awesome life. So you're going to get better at meeting women, but you're also going to have an awesome life from it because it's working on all the areas. Those are all the areas that make you attractive. So it's really this awesome killing two birds with one stone situation.
I love that, because that was initially, like, when I used to do these kind of interviews with, like, sort of dating focused, it was always, how do you approach a girl? How do you do your body language? How do you do, like, the indicators of interest and all this kind of stuff? But I've found that as I've sort of developed through doing the podcast and getting into self-development, it's a lot of times it's, if you build a life that's fun and attractive and it's always on the go and things are getting done, and you've got good friends and you've got it set up, women want to be part of that. People are naturally drawn into it, so you get better friends, you get better relationships in general. And I think that's the point, is like, a lot of guys think, oh no, the woman will complete me, so they put them on a pedestal, or I need a woman to make my life better, rather than saying, well, I'm going to make my life as good as possible, taking up jiu-jitsu, taking up guitar, going salsa dancing, whatever it is. They think that the woman is the missing piece of them, that they'll make them whole. And I think that's where a lot of guys forget. It's it's to become part of your life. It's not to be your life. And I certainly struggled with that. I thought there was something wrong with me. I was only happy when I was within a relationship, but then I was never happy in a relationship. I wanted to be single again, and it's certainly a difficult one. But for, say you've got a guy listening who's thinking, okay, I'm going to go and hit the gym. I'm going to start getting some decent clothes. I'm going to start looking at improving each area of my life, just even a 1% better every day. How do you come from the attitude of, let's be social to everybody? I mean, I was raised, you speak to the janitor as much as the CEO. You go and you help anybody just for the sake of helping them, but you always chat to everybody and how's your day going? And, you just work on your social skills that way. Is that a good way of doing it? Because, that's how I initially did it. I spoke to the cashier. I spoke to the guy stuck in the trolleys if I passed him and we caught, eyes met or whatever. How do you get a client more social? How do you get their communication skills up? That, because holding a conversation for a long time with a potential girlfriend or somebody you're dating is a struggle. For guys who are not social at all, how do you start getting their confidence up in this area?
Well, yeah, that's definitely step one. And I really like that you went through that. And that's really good advice. You want to be talking to everybody. Any opportunity you have to talk to someone is a great opportunity. So you can get used to talk to every single person. So you have the opportunity to experience getting better with talking to women. So any opportunity you have to talk to someone is great practice for you to be really good at it, just being able to have conversation with a stranger. So I agree with that. You want to be talking to, the CEOs and the janitors and the bus drivers and the person next to you, and starting conversation as much as you can to tap into that. One of the things that I do with guys, especially in my coaching program, is I hold them accountable to do certain amount of approaches every single week so they can get out there and start conversations with women and be able to practice the approach and get numbers and be able to do that. So it's a slow process, but you start with one approach at a time to get better, and you ease your way into it. You don't need to learn all this pickup material and then the first girl you approach just dispense all this material onto her and do it. No, as long as you're going out there and even asking directions somewhere, for crying out loud, or just starting a conversation with anyone is going to be a great first step. So then you can get used to all this socializing. So that's what I have guys do, is I start small and baby step their way all the way to the point where they're talking to women that they're really attracted to and getting their number.
So what would be like the kind of goal from that? Would you just say to him, right, I want you to go up there, and even if you just say, like, where's the nearest pub, or where do you know that the time is, I think was the one they used to always say in the pickup forums. Is it basic just to get you say something, get a reply back? Or do you want them then to start building on that? Have you got set goals when you set
Yeah,
these
definitely.
challenges?
Yeah, first you want to just get a couple of approaches in. See if you can go up and ask directions somewhere. See if you can ask what the time is. It's kind of like a video game. And you start off really easy. And if you can do that, then you go to the next level. The next level would be, can you go up to someone and just give them a compliment and walk away? Can you do that to a very pretty woman, one that you're very attracted to, who's intimidating? After that, can you go up to someone and ask them directions somewhere, but then try to continue conversation after that about something else, anything else? Can you then, after that, and this would be like the final level, just go up to a woman and say, hey, I saw you over here. You look nice. I wanted to come meet you. I'm Tripp. And then can you do that and then try to get a conversation going for 15 seconds, 30 seconds, a minute, 3 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, and then practicing being able to keep that conversation going. And then from there, let's learn how to flirt a little bit, challenge her a little bit to get her to chase you. Make sure that you're having proper tension principles in there, which means making sure you're building sexual tension by giving her good eye contact and doing some of that flirting. And so we practice this and we do it step by step until slowly but surely you become a rock star at this and unstoppable because you're practicing all these little things, which most guys don't practice. But it's kind of crazy. You can get good at it. And even if guys are saying, well, they still won't like me, I'm broke, I'm ugly, I have, I don't have a good job. Like, well, again, you optimize the best you can, but the behaviors hold such a heavier weight in terms of attraction. A woman will forgive a lot more than you think in terms of your looks if you're very charismatic and know how to speak to her.
Because I certainly used to think like, the really hot girls were going to be like this next level of like chat, and there's no way they'd be interested in what I had to say. And half the time it's like, they are very kind of, they're very quiet because they're used to being talked to, or they don't get asked a lot of stuff about themselves because guys are too busy trying to sell themselves to them. And they're some of the nicest people, and I think it's a real shame that a lot of guys are terrified to go and speak to these people. I mean, the something I struggled with was I would immediately go and think, oh, I've been chatting to this person for ages, and it'd be like 5 minutes because I was so worried about what I was saying and their reaction, and thinking, like, especially with the pickup, I always thought like it was like imposter syndrome. They're going to go, this is all bullshit, isn't it? You're just making this up as you go along. And because I just felt like it was a shell of somebody. I was playing a character, like you said. But what should we be looking for? For people who are going out and chat, is there? I know the old saying, indicators of interest. Is there things you should notice in a girl when she starts flirting back? How would you define flirty behavior to know that they are looking to maybe ask for the number for, saying, "Oh, do you want to meet up for a drink later?" Or like, how do we know when we go from a sort of uh, a nice social interaction into a more kind of dating
So you're
focus?
saying, how do you know when it's a good time to get her number and the vibe is there?
It's more kind of like, how do I realize that the person I'm speaking to is actually not being friendly and just kind of, oh, it's a random person speaking to me, but how to know that they want to maybe take this a bit further and they're maybe attracted to you? Do you have things that you notice, like you get them to look for their eye contact, or
As long as they're still there with me, as long as they're still there and they're still talking to me and we still have a conversation going, then at that point, I know that they're at least somewhat interested and I'll go for the number. So
I love
I
that.
don't care, if, if they're giving me great eye contact or not. I'm going to stay in and keep talking to them. Now, if they leave, and I know they're not interested. But if they're in that conversation, I'm going to be asking her out. And you'd be surprised, even though a woman may not look interested, could be because she's shy. So you cannot make assumptions. So again, as long as she's still there, I know that she's interested, and then I'll ask her out.
And do you think that's probably one of these things that a lot of guys pick up and they're too busy looking for, where's her eyes, where's her, like, how's her body language, is it open or is it closed, or is she going to speak into her friends? Oh, I mean, she's not interested in me. Have we kind of become so sort of bogged down in the sort of the bullshit of meeting and chatting and try to build an attraction that we've forgotten how to just be in the moment.
Well, I think that, yeah, that's definitely the case, is you definitely forget to be in the moment. And the big problem is that's stuff that you just don't need to be thinking about or paying too much attention to. That stuff is not important, and it's gonna just make your head into a jumble. So I make it simple. Is she there? Is she talking to me? Is she responding to me? Is she asking me questions? If she is, awesome, great. I'm going to move forward to the next step and I'm going to ask her out, as long as I'm talking to her for enough time.
I wish I'd found your stuff sooner, because I can't think of the number of times I was sitting in an interaction thinking, right, if they say that, then I've got to move it to the words here, and I'm going to do this. And I remember I blew this amazing chance. This girl was like really nice in a nightclub, and I started playing up to this character, there's some routine, and she kind of just looked at me like I just like shit on her Christmas dinner or something like that. It's just like, yeah, that's just not me. But now she's walking away thinking, what an arsehole. And I can remember thinking that's it, I'm changing. So I just started being myself, and I strangely found people liked the version of me. But we have these limiting beliefs like you talk about. But one of the big things people are limited by is the belief of social anxiety. They think they're too afraid to approach people, and that this is wrong with them. Does social anxiety exist? If so, how can we get rid of it?
Social anxiety absolutely does exist. But the way to get over it, and the way that you're going to get over it, is by making sure that you're consistently doing approaches and approaching women. And I know that sounds like a catch-22. It's like, well, how can I do that if I have approach anxiety? Well, what you're going to do is you're just going to make sure that you're doing one little baby step at a time. So there is something you can do. There's always something that you're able to do, in terms of being able to socialize. There's always something that you can say to someone. There's always an approach that can be had. There's always going up and asking directions somewhere. I mean, anyone who I've worked with who's got bad social anxiety, they're able to do even the easiest of approaches. So it's just this matter of desensitizing a person through their fear of socializing with these little baby steps. And it might take some person a long time, it might take them a long time, but that's just going to be their path, and they're just going to have to go through it and do a little baby step at a time.
It's time for a quick break. There are millions of potential products to buy, so how do you know which ones are worth your hard-earned money? Simple. You go to nextlevelguy.com/affiliates and explore those that will transform and improve your life. You'll find deals, listener exclusives, and special offers with some great companies. Recommendations are 100% honest and only on items Ian has tried or believes in. The companies showcased will make you a better man in all areas of your life. Simply go to nextlevelguy.com/affiliates and level up.
I definitely struggled with it. It was one of those things where you would go out and you'd build it up in your head, and then you would almost talk yourself out of it by waiting and waiting. And then, people could pick up on that sort of nervous energy. Do you take your clients, for example, out like for a couple of drinks before? What do you think about going, people using alcohol for like the, social lubricant? How do you feel about people getting desensitized to the environment? They're maybe not used to clubs or pubs. Should we just look to go out and meet people like day game, night game, all these kind of things that kind of throw in? How would you start somebody meeting the type of person they want, not just a girl?
So, no drinking, no alcohol. I don't want them to be intoxicated in any way whatsoever. I want them to be in coherent mind, because that's just a quick fix and it's not going to do anything for you, because imagine if you're trying to work on this stuff and you see a girl at the grocery store and you finally want to approach this girl, but you've only been practicing under the influence. What are you going to do? Run to your car and take a few shots of Jack Daniels? Probably not. Right. So you need to make it so it's sustainable and something you can do all the time. So I say no alcohol, and you just have to make a plan to go out a certain amount of days per week with a plan of doing a certain amount of approaches, so you can actually accomplish something here and do this. in a way that it's going to create a habit for you. And the better and the more how should I say, the more specific and tangible the goal and the habit is, the more likely you'll do it. If it's vague and you're like, okay, I'm going to do some approaches this week, you're probably not going to end up doing it. But if you say on Thursday, 12 o'clock, I'm going to go out for 1 hour and do 3 approaches, you're much more likely to do it. So you got to make sure that everything is concrete, specific, and that it's something that's achievable, something you can actually do. If it's too hard, you won't do it, right? Even if it's easy, that's fine. If you notice, wow, that was too easy, you'll just do another type of approach and you'll take it one step up.
Because now's the perfect time when everybody everybody wants to be social again and getting out and meeting people. And I know we've got all these kind of restrictions, but people are now really keen to kind of meet new people and just start being social again. And I think this is a struggle. Is a lot of people are saying, "Yeah, but I'm just coming out my divorce. Yeah, I'm still trying to get over my ex." Or how do we avoid these kind of like putting people on pedestals? How do we avoid like one-itis or fixation on one particular girl? Because I've struggled with that. My one girl I met, Kalana, I was head over heels in love. So when we broke up, I was shit. I was shit creek. Like I was just terrible. I had no interaction skills. I had no interest, and all I did was pine for her and look at everything in rose tinted specs. And I think we kind of lose our ego, and we lose our sort of confidence in ourselves. So for people who are struggling in this area, how can we move on from sort of sexual hang-ups or frustrations or, from hurt, emotional baggage or hurt even?
I think it really all comes down to the self. The reason why you're putting women on a pedestal and the reason why you're so needy for women is because you don't look at yourself as valuable. So the second you start looking at it as a woman is really valuable, you're basically just saying, I'm not good enough, which basically means you're saying, I don't respect myself and I don't think that I offer value. So the ultimate is turning it all around and thinking and believing this girl, as pretty as she is, as cool as she is, would be lucky to have me. Now, you can say that all day long and you might not believe it. So you have to actually do the things that are going to make you a valuable person. So if you're a guy who's not going after what he wants, who's not working on his goals, who isn't succeeding in anything in his life, who isn't, doesn't have a nice friend group around him. Remember, we're talking about outer qualities. And again, this is not having to do with being rich and being good looking. You got to throw that out the window. Okay. Because again, you're always going to be competing. If that's the game you want to play, then you'll be competing on that forever. And also, attraction is subjective. One girl might like you who's, let's say you think she's beautiful, and she might say, "Yeah, you're not her type." And another girl equally as beautiful might be like, "Oh, that guy is my type." You just never know. So you just optimize all those things, but you got to make sure that you're creating a life and working on the self and your self-esteem enough to the point where you realize, wow, a woman would be actually lucky to have, like, really, not just some, fun little nice thing to say to yourself in the morning and repeating mantras and things like that, but really believing I am a quality guy. And if you don't believe that, then you better start working on the things that make you feel that way. And it doesn't have to be, again, being super rich and good looking, but working on the things in your career, doing cool things in terms of skills or hobbies. Again, having good friends around you, having an interesting lifestyle. That doesn't mean traveling around the world in jets and being rich, but as long as you're doing things on a weekly basis and traveling a little bit or doing something interesting with your life, if you don't think your life is interesting and you're not fulfilled in your life, no woman's going to think the same about you. So you need to make sure that you're doing things that really fulfill, all these different areas. So then you can believe that you are a 10. And then you won't be so needy for a woman.
Because I definitely was needy for a while. And I know a lot of friends who were. And, it was that moment of, yeah, that I need that girl. I need a girlfriend. She fits this hole that I know is missing from me and all this kind of bullshit, And it's only since the last couple of years where I've kind of really just settled into myself and finally with the podcast and do my own stuff, I kind of realized it's like I don't need a girlfriend. I would like one. When I do date, I'm kind of like, yeah, as long as they fit in to my life and they don't kind of change me and stuff. And it's when I look back at who I was to where I am now, I go, geez. But it's hard to explain it to somebody when you see them doing it, and it's a kind of a voyage of your own to be comfortable in your own skin and kind of realize that, yeah, you're a prize. It's they should be interested in you as much as you're interested in them. But something I was really interested in is the idea of like storytelling and how humans communicate through stories and how we kind of can build attraction through stories. But a lot of people struggle in that. They can go up and say, "Oh, do you want a drink?" and that, but they can't hold the attention of somebody. They can't build intense or build make it funny and stuff like that. Have you got tips on being a sort of not a jack of the box, but being somebody that kind of can be funny, can give and take, can make them work for it, and just kind of be a fun guy? Probably is a better way of putting it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that in order to have a more interesting conversation, you just got to focus more on the emotions and details of things. So if you're just spitting out facts and you're being very vague with what you're talking about, it's not very interesting. So you want to make sure that when you're telling stories, you're very detailed, you're very specific, and you're talking about how things felt, because that's going to be more interesting. So, for example, let's say you said, "Hey, have you traveled anywhere interesting lately?" And I was like, "Oh, yeah, I went to, let's see, where have I gone recently? I went to Costa Rica and it was a really good time." Most guys might just say that just because they don't know what else to say and they want to just get something out and they think that's good enough, right? Ooh, they went to Costa Rica. Yeah, okay, that's okay. It's cool that you went there and that you can actually say that, but that's not really enough, you know? You can say something like, "Oh yeah, I went to Costa Rica. It was amazing." So that was my second time there. I went for a week and I was doing all kinds of things, paddleboarding in the ocean. The ocean was so warm and beautiful. I stayed at this really amazing resort that was on this cliff, and I would see the sunrise and the sunset every day because it was on this peninsula, et cetera, et cetera. That's way different than being like, "Oh yeah, I went to Costa Rica. It was a really good time. I can't wait to go again." But diving into things, not being afraid to go into things and describe them in detail and make the person more interested in what you're saying by telling them what it was like for you. I even like to ask that question to women to make the conversation more interesting, saying something along the lines of, "What was that like for you?" So if she says a really boring answer and she's like, "Oh yeah, I went to France a couple months ago," I would say, "Well, what was it like?" Great question to ask girls, by the way, because then they're going to go into detail. They're going to say how they felt about it, and then it's going to relive the moment when they were inside of it. It's going to make the conversation more interesting for you, that's for sure. But it's also going to make the conversation more interesting for her so she gets to describe it. And then you guys can talk deeper on that level. So I always like to make sure I'm being specific and detailed in anything I'm saying. So if you're not a good storyteller, you don't know how to build something up and then introduce it and then go to a climax and a conclusion and all that stuff, you don't need that stuff. You just need to be detailed, say what it was like for you, say why you liked it, and just give a little bit more than the facts.
And how then do we avoid being? Because something I used to do was I'd be chatting about it, and, "Oh, how you going to do it?" But I would never know how to ramp it up towards asking for a number or asking to go on a date or things like that. And I really struggled with that, and I blunted my way into it a lot of times. Just randomly say it, and thankfully I would pick up enough attraction. In some cases, they would just go, "Oh yeah, cool, let's go," and they would always laugh about it when we were dating later on. I would say every time we talked about how we met, is there is there really such a thing as the key time to ask for a number, a key time to ask for a date? Or is it just a case of you're enjoying speaking to somebody, just ask them for the date? How do you work that sort of angle with your
If you
clients?
want to just make this easy for yourself, I'd say it's keep it time based. You're talking to a girl and it's a daytime approach or at a grocery store, 10 to 15 minutes. She sticks along that long enough for 10 to 15 minutes. Your chances of getting her number versus talking to her for 2 minutes are exponentially higher So think about it time-based. You go out to a bar or a club or a party. It should be a little bit longer because it's somewhere where you'd socialize anyways. So you kind of need longer to really show that it's you guys making a connection. So it'd be about 20 to 30 minutes. Then I would go for the number. So think about it time-based because, the thing is a guy might not get the signs. Like I said earlier, right? He might not get the signs that the girl's interested, but she might be. She's just a little nervous or a little, socially awkward. But then you ask for a number thinking this girl's definitely going to say no, and she says yes. Or, you're talking to a girl and 3 minutes go by and she's touching you and she's all over you and this is great. And you're like, I'm just going to go for the number now. And she's like, oh, no, sorry, because she doesn't really feel like she knows you that well. And she was just being a little bit flirty because that's her personality. But you can't beat time. The more time you spend with a girl, the more invested she becomes, the more interested she is, and the higher chance of getting a number. So focus more on time and then fill in the blank with conversation, with stories, with asking her a couple of questions, and with just a little bit of flirtation. With flirtation, it's just very simple. Maybe one compliment, nothing too big. Being able to tease them a little bit when you're talking to them and keeping it really simple and just being a cool, normal, chill guy. Do that for 10 to 15 minutes. Have multiple of those conversations. Guarantee you get a bunch of numbers.
That's a fantastic way of looking at it, because I think I've read too many of these books or read all these articles when I was younger, and it was like, you have to do this and she has to do that. And, I think it spoils it for a lot of guys who get into pickup to meet women because they feel that they're not confident enough or whatever. And they become these sort of shallow versions of themselves. And I'll speak to some girls and they'll say, you'll get their number, and later on, and I'll go, I didn't think you were into me. And they'll say, oh, I just don't ask for the number. If a guy wants my number, he has to ask for it. And I was thinking, if I never asked for it at the time, if I didn't feel confident enough to go for it, like, you just never know what's happening, And how should you deal with rejection? Because I've ended up dating girls who've said no to me originally, and I've met them elsewhere, and they don't even remember saying no to you at the in that nightclub or the pub because they were having a bad day, or they were interested in somebody else at the time, or there's a multitude of other reasons. But a lot of people don't even go in, try the game because they're afraid of getting rejected. How should we look at rejection? Is it just a learning curve? Is there such a thing as rejection because you get the social experience from it?
That's the big idea there, is that every single interaction is positive. The second you go in there thinking it's binary, meaning you have two choices, it's either she rejects me or she doesn't, you're setting yourself up for failure, because you are going to get rejected. It's just going to happen. Maybe not every time, but then this is a really crappy way about going about this process, where you're like, okay, am I going to feel crappy because I get rejected, or am I going to feel awesome because she doesn't reject me? It's just not a really great way to learn something. You have to take out the judgment from it. So the best thing you could do is go into an interaction thinking about, okay, I get experience and I get a chance to meet someone, to talk to someone, to have a good conversation, and to practice whatever I'm trying to get better at in my social skills. Because there's always something to work on. Maybe it's storytelling, maybe it's flirting, maybe it's just the approach itself. So every approach is an opportunity, and it's a learning lesson. So it's really inherently always positive and always good, even if they do reject you. Because at the end of the day, there's nothing you're going to be able to do to get every single woman to like you. It's just not possible. It really isn't. So you got to go into the situation not expecting much of it. Don't expect a rejection or not a rejection. Just go into it non-judgmental and focus more on the interaction than the outcome of the interaction. And that's going to help you tremendously in that.
That's another great point. And for people who are looking at this in terms of, but I could go and I could join a dating app, or I could do Tinder and things like that. Do you think this is why there's kind of that shallow surface level on a lot of these sort of dating sites, and a lot of people don't have much of it, there's not much to them? Is that where they're so used to dealing with the shallow side of dating? Unfortunately, they're not used to being true to themselves.
How do you mean exactly?
Well, I was just thinking, like, I mean, when like I go into sort of like in these dating apps, I tend to find that sometimes there's people there that when you ask them a question, they're just not they don't know how to respond to it because they're so used to being complimented on their looks and stuff like that. Do you find? I mean, do you find that with because we can now flick through, we don't really get we're not used to getting to know people. We're just judging straight away on looks, on the pictures, on the text. A lot of the young people have forgotten how to build attraction, build connections.
Maybe it's tough to say because I really feel like we've always been, at least for guys, well, girls too. I mean, you see a person, if you're physically attracted to them or not, and that's gonna make or break you wanting to talk to them. So whether that's on an online dating app or in person, but I get what you're saying. Yeah, it is to a hyper level nowadays because we're doing this on our phones and we're doing it with, over 100 women in about, 10 minutes versus maybe a couple women you might see when you're walking around. So it could have an effect on people, but I think at the end of the day, the biggest problem that I think is just the paradox of choice. Is just the idea that because there's so much choice, how do you choose? So once you do start getting good at this, you just got to be careful with not just hopping from one woman to the next. If you're looking for a relationship specifically, of course, if you're not, then that wouldn't pertain to someone like that. But it just gets a little challenging with that,
And how would you then work on, say you get a couple of numbers, you're interested in them, you're not doing this sort of pickup thing of playing the field if that's not what you're into. Um, how would you start using like the phone, like for calls and texts? Because there's always a game when I used to do pickup. There's always a phone game or a text game, and I just thought I just want to chat to them. But how should you deal with taking that next step once you want to get the number, you want to start building towards dates? Like how would you set up a date? How would you set up using your texts to keep that intrigue, find out more about them, build a connection?
So you're saying, how do you set up the date?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people get numbers, but then they don't really go anywhere because they don't know then how to keep
Uh,
it going while it's on the phone call or text or.
the system I have is you got to set up you got to set up a date as soon as possible. So you got to make sure that when you get their number, you text them the next day, the next afternoon, and you ask them right away. You say, "Hey, this is Tripp. Nice meeting you yesterday." And they'll say, "Hey, nice to meet you." And then you'll say, "When are you free this week? Let's grab a drink or let's grab some coffee if you don't drink alcohol." You got to set up the date right away so you can have momentum, so you can actually make sure that you're keeping up with the traction. If you wait too long to text them, if you wait too long to, you know, just chit chat and you're just chatting on text all day and you're waiting too long to ask them out, it's going to be a big problem. So you got to make sure that you're doing it right away to keep up with the momentum of the original interaction where you got attraction. So get them on a date, get them on a date as soon as they can, pick a spot, don't do a fancy dinner, make it easy, grab a drink, and boom, you're on your way. That's what I say for all first dates.
And is there a need to go and use like Tinder and all these kind of apps as well? Or are they cracks that people would use to kind of not go out, but or should they be used in sort of comparison with going
Got to
out?
use both. Got to use both. Don't be just approaching in person. Don't just be using online dating. There are women in person who are not going to be online, and there are women that will be online that you'll probably never meet in person. So get both opportunities and work on both simultaneously so you have as many leads as possible, which means you have as many opportunities as possible to meet a woman that you're interested in.
And sort of say we've got the date, we've arranged the date, and it's like a coffee date, or it's, you want to take them to a certain art display or something like that, that kind of highlights a part of your personality. How do you work then with a client? To get dressed for it, to what to discuss on it, how to keep the date moving and keep it interesting and fun. Because there's a lot of this pickup thing of, oh, you need to be escalating with a touch and you need to be doing this, you need to. I always found that was just too much. I just like spending time with them. But how do we make sure we're not maybe becoming more of a friend than a potential
Physical
dater,
interaction.
or a love interest?
Physical interaction. So you have to make sure that you are kissing them at the end of the first date, keeping things physical, and always escalating to sex. Because if you're not doing that, you're a friend. And the biggest difference between a friend and not a friend is just physical intimacy. So a lot of guys will be scared to go for the kiss. You got to go for the kiss. You got to show them you're interested in this for something more than friendship. And the deal breaker there is being physical with each other.
And are there certain traits that you've noticed, like that a lot of girls hate? I mean, I know it probably depends on their sort of race, religion, upbringing, beliefs, all this sort of thing. But are there sort of universal traits that guys do that immediately they go, "Oh, sod this"?
That get them in trouble? Like friend zone?
Yeah.
So I would say that the thing that I've seen the worst is not moving forward physically in interaction and also being too available. If you're always too available and you're always there, texting back right away, answering their calls right away, being available to hang out right away, you're making yourself too available, which makes you look needy and looks like you don't have a life. So those two things, bad. Don't be too available all the time to hang out and respond to their text messages. And also make sure that you're still moving the interaction forward and being physical so you don't land in a friend zone, which is what most guys end up with because they're too scared to go for the kiss because they're scared of getting rejected.
Well, before we kind of go into do another one and go really into the deeper stuff and really jump, really sort of pick on the finer points, because I've got so many more. I've kind of kept the general now. What do you want people to take from this? What would be the sort of that message you want people to remember about the initial, yes, you can get more girls, you can be more attractive and meet the people you want?
I would say don't get overwhelmed. Start small. We talked about a lot of stuff in this podcast, and there's a lot of stuff to be worked on. Anything you do that moves you forward is great. Don't get stuck listening to podcasts all day. Don't get stuck watching videos all day, going over course material. Do what you can to just get out there. If you can't get out there and this is paralyzing to you, get a coach. Hire someone to help you, to push you and get you in the right direction. Meaning, do what you can to get it out there. And once you're stuck, get the help that you need. That's going to make it so you actually get results. Focus on taking action and not sitting in your house all day, listening, watching, and reading stuff. Got to take action, even if it's a little approach, going out there, talking to one girl, talking to a bartender, talking to the gas station clerk, whatever it may be. Make sure you're just always moving forward. And if not, and you're stuck, get the help that you need. That's what I would say would be the biggest thing.
Perfect. Well, until the next time, how can people keep reading more about your stuff, getting an update on you, come and work with you, see your social media?
Yeah, totally. You can look me up, Tripp Advice, on Google if you want to find all the things. If you want to listen to my podcast and you like podcasts, come over to How to Talk to Girls. That's my podcast, which is on all the platforms. So you'll find it literally wherever you're listening to your podcast right now. And if you're like, nope, I'm ready to, don't need more podcasts, like let's jump in and I want to work with you and I want to just start coaching and get this part handled so I can get it handled fast, then just go to coachedbytripp.com and you can apply to work with me and we can coach together. And if you're not ready for that, that's totally fine. That could be a big jump for some guys. Head over to the podcast, listen to that and learn some more about meeting women, attraction, social anxiety, and getting the women that you're attracted to.
Well, that's it for another week, and thank you for listening. It's now time to take what you've learned and use it to develop and enhance your life with the key points mentioned. Listen, try it, embrace it, use it, and crush it. Now's your time to hit that next level in your life. If you liked this episode, then please leave a comment on the show notes or a review of the show on your podcast platform. Everything helps evolve the show. Until next week, keep seeking the next level in your life.